All right, hello, my name is Aiden Jakubik. For my book, I chose Palestine by Joe Sacco. Um, so Joe Sacco, as an artist, he's both not an artist, an author. He's both a journalist and a comic author, and he paved the way for writing comic style books about serious topics. Such as Palestine. Um, he was a Maltese American cartoonist and journalist. He's known for pioneering the blend of comics and serious investigating reporting. His other works is Safe Area Gorazde, based on the Bosnian War. And then he obviously wrote a lot about Gaza and what went on and what was going on and is going on there. He published it as a complete series in 2001, but from 1993 and 1995, he published them separately. The comic was created at a crucial moment in the Israel-Palestine conflict in the early 1990s, and that's very relevant to today. It was in the wake of the Oslo Accords, which aimed for peace but failed to improve conditions for many Palestinians. Palestine as a book is very important because it breaks mainstream media, whereas you get most of your information from the news, whereas it's a much more it's much more attainable. It's much easier to understand than if you're just given a book in this different format. It also had a ton of influence, and it definitely helped pave the way for nonfiction comics, because at this point, comics, well, for one thing, weren't huge, but what sort of section they had in fiction, in writing, was mainly fiction, not nonfiction. So that was obviously very influential on the comic book aspect, but also just in general. What the book was actually about. The narrative is largely episodic, tracing Sacco's travels in the West Bank and Gaza Strip in the late 1991, early 1992. He inserts himself as a character, often cartoonish and exaggerated, interacting with Palestinians from different cities and backgrounds. That includes in Jerusalem, Nablus, Hebron, Gaza, locations of interviews, protests, checkpoints, just like important historic spots. He talked about home demolition, military checkpoints, arbitrary arrests, torture and imprisonment, just absolutely very deep, terrible topics, things that you wouldn't expect picking up a comic book. But it almost adds to, like, if you had just written it, it would all be in your head versus, you're not only reading it, but you're seeing it on paper, which I think is, ties back to what we read about, why write in comic form, what makes it almost better, or what makes, than just actual writing, and that is that you just get the imagery more specific, more almost real, because it's just not all in your head. It leaves less up to interpretation, I think, is what I'm trying to say. His artistic techniques, very dense black and white line work, very detail-oriented, heavy cross-hatching adds texture, shadow, and a very claustrophobic atmosphere, because the book is not supposed to be comfortable. Not at all. If he had written about this topic in a comfortable way, it would almost be insulting to the topic. So the panels often feel packed, evoking tension and confinement of occupation, which could be also seen as how the Palestinians felt at this point in time. The devices he used captions, which show Sacco's inner thoughts and observations, word balloons, which is pretty basic for this type of writing. Dual framing draws the reader in both perspectives. He uses tension between text and image, creates emotional and ethical complexity. Reader engagement is a big thing. This is not a book that you can just skim through, not even a little bit. It definitely demands close reading. The visual textual density makes it so you can't really just flip through and almost ignore the writing in some bits and just look at the images. Like, you really need to pay attention, go page for page, which this isn't the type of book that you pick up just to skim through either way. Legacy wise, how did critics, what was their reception like to the book? The Guardian called it a landmark in comics journalism, which, as I've said before, it makes a lot of sense, because this is, this was the start of nonfiction in comics, but even today, this is still top of the line. It's not like this was just like the catalyst and now we have all these other things. Like, this book still holds up very well. Critics praise its depth, its formal intentiveness, and its ethical focus. Of course, with this topic, there's going to be a lot of ethical values being displayed from, obviously, the author, Joe Sacco. Ongoing relevance is the reason why I picked up the book, is because, this was very relevant in the 90s, but, this is one of, if not the most prominent political topic in the United States today. Palestine still resonates as a model for how journalism can humanize and contextualize systematic violence. What made me pick up the book was the fact that, from what I'd seen online beforehand, was that it was praised for being very honest, not with ulterior motives, just straight up like, this is what's going on there. And that's the problem with using the internet and learning about this topic today, is that there's just way too many hands in the basket right now, where you can't really, everyone has an ulterior motive when picking each side, and that's not how you get unbiased information. Impact on the genre is something I've talked about before. When you talk about the legacy of the book, like the legacy of comics, you're going to choose this one for nonfiction. That's just how it is. It's so impactful on this specific genre, on all writing, especially on this specific topic. So extremely impactful. Here's what I think stood out in the book were the visuals. The visuals were incredible. The amount of detail went into this book. I'd really like to know more about what went into his own, like what it was like for him to write this, because I can't imagine this is something that you can just bang out. Like, this was an incredibly detail-oriented book, and honestly a masterpiece. This book was incredible. The different specifics with visuals. I don't have the book right now, but checkpoints, armed soldiers, anxious crowds. It's honestly, the way he filled up each page just made it like the tone, it's so hard to put into words, but it's crazy how you look at the book while you're reading, how it can make you feel something, and you don't understand exactly why you're feeling it, but it's just because of how cramped it is, and stress orienting. The visuals are easily the biggest standout, in my opinion. The ethical aspects of this were also incredible. The uniqueness, the synergy between image and text. It did not feel like, okay, this page, like, the text was very strong, but the images, didn't go quite along. Like, that was never a thing. Like, this never felt like it could have been a writing, and then you added images in and then called it a comic book. Like, this was clearly, every word, line had direct correlations to the imaging. Like, it felt like it all went together very well. Summing it up, the book Palestine is a landmark in comic book writing when it comes to nonfiction. I've said this a few times in this video. The way, just the way that this is so different from like what you believe comic books are as a genre, what we've read before in this class, what I thought comics were like going into this class. This just completely, like, after reading this, I might just, next time I want to learn about a topic, I'm gonna be like, has someone written a comic book about this? Because you would never think that comic books can cover such intense topics and do it so well, so unbiased. I mean, I wouldn't say unbiased when it comes to morals and opinions on what's going on, but unbiased on literally he just went there and he's just showing you what it's like there. It was a great book. And honestly, I recommend it to anyone out there that would like to learn about this topic. Not even just, I'd like to read a nonfiction comic book, but if you want to learn about what's going on there and what has been going on there, this is just an incredible book to read. All right, thank you.